Hey everyone, have you ever wondered what the most misunderstood job at one of the world's wonders would be? Well, let me tell you about the 5 months you spent working as a security guide at Machu Picchu in Peru. And trust me, by the end of this story, you'll understand why you can never hear phrases like go all the way up, reach the peak, or help me get to the top without your face turning red. This is the story of how you took what seemed like a dream job at an ancient wonder of the world and ended up in situations so awkward that you considered moving to a country without mountains. And before we climb into this Peruvian chaos, if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button right now, smash that like button because this story is absolutely wild, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our crazy stories. All right, let's get into it. So here's how this whole adventure started. You're an American with Peruvian heritage, fluent in Spanish and English, living in Cusco after doing a study abroad semester that you never left. You've been working odd tourism jobs to extend your visa, and one day you see this posting. Bilingual security guide needed for Machu Picchu. Assist visitors, ensure safety protocols, manage crowd control, $1,200 per month plus accommodation near site. $1,200 goes far in Peru. You love the mountains, and working at one of the 7 wonders sounds incredible. You apply, interview with the tourism ministry, pass a background check, and 2 weeks later you're wearing an official guide uniform with a radio and starting your training. Your trainer, Carlos, a weathered Peruvian man in his 50s who's worked at Machu Picchu for 20 years, explains the job. Your role is safety and rule enforcement. Make sure tourists don't touch the ruins, don't go into restricted areas, stay on marked paths, and don't do anything stupid like try to climb structures. You'll also help people who are struggling with altitude, direct foot traffic during busy times, and answer basic questions. Simple, yes? It sounds straightforward. You're stationed at the main entrance area and some of the higher viewing platforms. Your first day is a Tuesday in June, peak tourist season. You arrive at 6 a.m. when the site opens, and immediately you're struck by how beautiful and crowded it is. Hundreds of tourists streaming in, all with the same awestruck expressions, cameras out, guides explaining history in a dozen languages. You position yourself at your assigned spot near the guardhouse and begin your work. For the first few hours, everything is normal. You help an elderly woman who's feeling lightheaded from the altitude, you redirect some tourists who wandered toward a restricted area, you take photos for countless groups, standard tourist stuff. But then around 10 a.m., a group of young American women, probably mid-20s, approach you. They're clearly already tired from the climb up to the citadel, sweating, breathing hard. One of them, a blonde with a California accent, asks, "Hey, so, can you help us go all the way up? We heard there's a higher spot with better views, but we're not sure if we can make it." You think she's asking about Huayna Picchu, the peak that towers behind Machu Picchu that requires a separate ticket and guided climb. You start explaining about the permit system and timing when she interrupts. No, we mean can you take us up, personally? We'd feel safer with a guide who knows how to handle it. There's something in her tone and the way her friends are giggling that makes you pause, but you assume they're just nervous about the steep climb. You explain that your role is security within the main citadel, not leading climbs to Huayna Picchu, but you can point them to the guides who do that. She looks disappointed. "Oh, so you can't help us reach the peak? That's too bad. You look like you'd be really good at getting people to the top." Her friends burst into laughter. You finally realize they're not entirely talking about mountain climbing. Your face goes red, you stammer something professional about following the rules, and they walk away still giggling. You stand there thinking, did that just happen? You radio Carlos and tell him about the weird interaction. He laughs. "Ah, yes, welcome to Machu Picchu tourism. People come here, they're excited, altitude makes them giddy, and they see young guides in uniform, and sometimes their brains get stupid. You'll get a lot of comments about going up, reaching peaks, climbing together. Just stay professional and ignore the innuendo." You realize that your job just became way more complicated than managing crowds.
Week 2, and you've started recognizing patterns. The phrases people use when asking for help are innocent on the surface, but the way some people say them, with that look and that tone, makes it clear they mean something else. Can you show me the best position when asking about photo spots? I need help getting on top when referring to climbing to a platform. How long does it typically take to reach climax when asking about the highest point? You've developed a strategy. Answer everything as literally and technically as possible. Maintain eye contact, show zero reaction to any innuendo. It works most of the time. But then comes the incident that will haunt you. You're helping manage a bottleneck at one of the narrow stone staircases when a couple, Americans in their 30s, gets to the top and the woman is exhausted. She's gasping for air, hands on her knees, clearly not prepared for the altitude and exertion. You immediately go into safety mode, asking if she's okay, offering water from your emergency supply, checking for signs of altitude sickness. She catches her breath and says, "Oh my God, that was intense."
I haven't worked that hard to get on top of something in a while. Her husband snickers. She continues, "But seriously, thank you. You were so helpful. Do you often help people who are struggling to rise to the occasion?" You're trying to be professional, checking her pulse to ensure she's not having a medical emergency, when she adds, "My heart is racing. Is that normal after such a hard climb?" You explain that yes, elevated heart rate is expected from the exertion and altitude. You're checking to make sure it's not dangerously high. The husband says, "Well, he certainly knows how to get a woman's heart racing, doesn't he, honey?" They both laugh. You finish your medical check, confirm she's fine, and extract yourself from the situation as quickly as possible while maintaining professionalism. Later, Carlos finds you looking flustered and just pats your shoulder. You'll get used to it. Or you won't. Either way, it keeps happening. By week 3, you've become somewhat famous among the other guides and security staff for attracting the most awkward interactions. They've started taking bets on how many inappropriate comments you'll get per day. The record is 7 in one shift, all variations on climbing, reaching peaks, and stamina. One guide, Maria, who's been working there for a decade, tells you, "It's because you're young, you're fit, you're helpful, and you're in a position of authority. Some tourists see that and their brains go to weird places. Plus, mountain metaphors are inherently problematic. Everything sounds sexual when you're talking about climbing and reaching tops." She's right, and you start noticing that even completely innocent work conversations with colleagues sound bad. "I need to check the stability of that upper section before letting anyone climb it. Make sure people don't try to reach the peak without proper preparation. The ascent is steep and requires good stamina." All perfectly normal professional observations about mountain safety that sound completely different when taken out of context. You and Maria start making a game of it, seeing who can say the most innocent thing that sounds worst. It's the only way to maintain sanity. Week 4 brings media attention. A travel blogger with a huge following comes through, and apparently she decides you're going to be content. She asks for a photo with you, which is normal enough, but then she posts it on Instagram with the caption, "Met this helpful guide at Machu Picchu who promised to take me to heights I've never experienced. Mountain just making heights. Hashtag Machu Picchu, hashtag mountain guide, travel goals." With strategic emojis that make it very clear what heights she's implying. The post gets hundreds of thousands of likes. Your face is now associated with suggestive mountain puns across social media. The comments on her post are exactly what you'd expect. "I'd let him guide me anywhere." "Take me to the top, please." "I'd climbed that mountain." Your supervisor, Diego, calls you into his office. You think you're in trouble, but he's trying not to laugh. "So, you're internet famous now, for the wrong reasons. But also, tourist numbers are up this week, and several groups specifically asked for the American guide from Instagram, so good for business?" He tells you to just keep being professional and ignore the social media stuff. Easier said than done. Your next shifts are surreal. Groups of tourists actually recognize you from the post. Some are cool about it, just want a photo for their own social media. Others are weird, asking if you give private tours, with that emphasis that makes it clear they're not just asking about tours. One woman, probably in her 40s, hands you her hotel business card and says, "If you're ever free to show someone around Cusco, personally, let me know." You politely decline, explain you don't do private tours. She winks and walks away. You need a shower after that interaction. Week 5, and you've developed a reputation among the staff as the guy who gets all the weird attention. But you also notice something else. You're actually really good at your job. When there's a real emergency, altitude sickness, someone trips and scrapes their knee, a child gets separated from parents, you handle it professionally and effectively. You've learned to read crowds, identify potential problems before they happen, communicate clearly in both languages. The awkward attention is annoying, but the actual work is meaningful. Then comes the incident that changes everything. You're at your station when you hear shouting from one of the upper terraces. A man, European accent, is yelling for help. You run up the steep stone stairs, arriving to find a teenage boy sitting down, face pale, lips slightly blue, clearly in distress. Severe altitude sickness, possibly pulmonary edema. His parents are panicking. You immediately call for medical on your radio, assess the boy's condition, keep him calm, position him correctly, give him oxygen from the emergency kit you carry. You stay with him, monitoring his vitals, talking to him in English to keep him focused until the medical team arrives with a stretcher. They get him down to lower altitude quickly, and later you learn he recovered fully at the hospital in Aguascalientes. His parents find you the next day to thank you, crying, saying you saved their son's life. The father says, "We thought this was just a tourist job for you, but you were so professional, so skilled. Thank you." That moment, that genuine gratitude, reminds you why you took this position. Not for the Instagram posts or the awkward flirtations, but to actually help people experience this incredible place safely. Carlos pulls you aside after. "That was good work today, real work. This is what the job is actually about. Everything else, the tourists who make jokes, the social media stuff, that's just noise." Remember today when you get frustrated with the noise. You appreciate that perspective, but the noise doesn't stop. Week 7 brings a new challenge, a large group booking, a wellness retreat company bringing 30 people for a spiritual journey to Machu Picchu. The group leader, an American woman in her 50s with crystals around her neck and a tie-dye dress, explains that they want a deeply authentic experience, and can you facilitate their connection with the mountain energy? You're not sure what that means, but you're assigned to stay with their group as their designated security guide for the day. The group is intense. Lots of meditation, chanting, talking about sacred masculine and feminine energies of the peaks, and unfortunately, some of them decide you represent the masculine mountain energy they're supposed to connect with. Multiple members of the group, both men and women, ask you deeply personal questions about your relationship with the mountain, whether you feel the rising energy, and if you can help them channel the upward force. You answer everything as professionally as possible, talking about geological features and Incan history, but they're clearly disappointed you're not engaging with their spiritual interpretations. One woman from the group corners you during their meditation session and whispers, "I can feel your energy is very powerful, very ascending. Would you be willing to do a private energy exchange with me later?" You're not entirely sure what that means, but you're sure you don't want to find out. You politely decline, citing professional boundaries, and she looks offended. She complains to the group leader that you're blocked and not open to the sacred experience. The group leader tries to get you reassigned, but Diego backs you up, explaining that your job is safety, not spiritual facilitation. The group leaves, giving you bad reviews that mention you're closed off to cosmic connections. You consider that a compliment. And before I wrap this up, I need to hear from you guys. Have you ever had a job where literally everything you said could be misinterpreted as innuendo? Or worked somewhere where people projected their weird expectations onto you? Drop your stories in the comments because I'm dying to know if anyone else has had experiences like this.
By month 4, you've found your rhythm. You're excellent at the actual job, you've earned respect from your colleagues, you've legitimately helped dozens of people with altitude issues, heat exhaustion, navigation, and safety. You've also become immune to the innuendo, can deflect inappropriate comments without even breaking stride, and have perfected the art of the professional neutral face that gives away nothing. But you also notice something interesting. The job has made you genuinely knowledgeable about Machu Picchu.
You've studied the history in depth, learned about Incan engineering, learned about the astronomical alignments, know every stone and terrace. When you give directions or answer questions now, you often end up sharing fascinating facts. Some tourists who came for the Instagram photo leave having actually learned something, and that feels good. You also develop real friendships with other guides and staff. Maria becomes your closest work friend, you have lunch together, share stories about the weirdest tourist interactions. Carlos mentors you, teaches you about Peruvian culture and history. The local families who run businesses in Aguascalientes get to know you, treat you like one of their own. You're not just a tourist worker anymore, you're part of the community. Your final month, you've decided to stay in Peru, but transition to a different job, maybe teaching English in Cusco, something less metaphorically problematic. Your last week at Machu Picchu, several regular tourists who've gotten to know you over multiple visits come to say goodbye. One elderly couple from Canada thanks you for making their dream trip safe and informative. A solo traveler from Japan who was terrified of heights, but you helped her navigate the terraces, gives you an origami crane. A family from Brazil whose daughter you helped when she had altitude sickness brings you homemade brigadeiros. These moments make all the awkwardness worth it. Carlos works your final shift with you, and as you stand watching the sunset paint Huayna Picchu gold, he says, "You did good here, better than most young guides. You handled the strange parts with humor, but you took the important parts seriously. Machu Picchu needs people like that." Coming from Carlos, who's seen hundreds of guides come and go, that means everything. What did you learn from this experience? First, any job involving mountains, climbing, or reaching heights will inevitably attract innuendo, and there's nothing you can do about it except not react. Second, social media fame is weird, uncomfortable, and usually based on misunderstandings, but it's also temporary. Third, the real job is always different from what people think it is from the outside. Fourth, maintaining professionalism in the face of constant awkwardness is a skill that transfers to every area of life. Fifth, helping people in genuine need makes up for 1,000 awkward interactions. You also learned about yourself. You learned you can handle being the center of unwanted attention with grace. You learned that meaningful work doesn't have to be completely serious all the time, that humor and professionalism can coexist. You learned that Peru, with all its beauty and chaos, feels more like home than anywhere else. And you learned that some jobs give you great stories even when they're difficult. Today, 6 months later, you're teaching English in Cusco, living a quieter life, but people still occasionally recognize you. "Hey, aren't you the guide from that Instagram post?" You smile, confirm, and usually there's a story. You've become a small part of Machu Picchu lore. Your friends from the site still text you, send photos of tourists doing dumb things, ask if you miss the chaos. You do, sometimes. Despite everything, it was an adventure. Your family back in the US can't believe the stories when you tell them. They think you're exaggerating until you show them the social media posts, the reviews, the messages. Then they're both horrified and amused. Your mom says, "Only you could turn a job at a world wonder into a comedy of errors." But she's also proud that you helped people, stayed professional, and found a home in Peru. Sometimes when you're teaching a boring grammar lesson, you think about those mornings at Machu Picchu, watching the mist clear from the ruins, helping visitors from every corner of the world experience something magical. And you realize that even with all the awkwardness, all the inappropriate comments, all the misunderstandings, you had one of the coolest jobs in the world. How many people can say they worked at one of the 7 wonders? So that's it, everyone. The completely true, only slightly exaggerated story of how you became a security guide at Machu Picchu and learned that ancient wonders, mountain metaphors, and tourist behavior create the perfect storm of awkwardness, but also that helping people experience incredible places is worth all the weirdness.
If you enjoyed this journey through Peruvian tourism chaos, absolutely demolish that like button. Share this with your friends who need to hear about bizarre job experiences, and subscribe if you haven't already, because we've got more insane stories coming. Thanks for watching, and remember, if a job sounds amazing at a world wonder, it probably involves dealing with people who can't stop making climbing jokes. See you in the next one, and may your careers have fewer double entendres than mine did.